wrote this for you. And I don't want you to hurt, so I'll give you this hope.
Hi everybody, welcome to Freedom Friday. I'm Darienne from DariAwaken.com. I have the window open, so you might hear some noise, some birds chirping. The birds have been so chirpy lately, and it's really beautiful. So I hope you enjoy that. Today I want to talk about the ego. Now, I just recorded a whole video about the ego, and my phone died through it, and I lost the entire video. So I'm going to have to ask that God please speak through me and give me whatever it is the people on this video need to hear. And yeah, because I've already said everything, so I know I'm going to forget everything I was supposed to say, but we'll see. So today I want to talk about the ego. I want to talk about the common, I think, conception of what the ego is, or definition of the ego. I want to talk about the mystic definition of the ego and the spiritual definition of the ego, and what we're talking about when you hear that word ego. And then I want to talk about how the ego can actually serve you. If you've never heard of the ego, then the beginning of this video will be amazing. Hopefully. But if you have heard of the ego already, so I'm not going to be saying anything you haven't heard before, but you may have never heard how the ego can serve you. I know that that's a step that I didn't even get to until far beyond the first time I heard of the ego and started recognizing the ego. So the common conception of what the ego is, or common definition for the ego, is when someone is being egotistical or has a big ego, usually it's that they think they're better than other people. That's kind of the common, when somebody says, oh my God, he's egotistical, you're usually saying that he thinks or she thinks that they're better than everybody else. And part of that is the spiritual and mystic definition of the ego, but it goes way, way deeper. Now, there are books like, for me, The Power of Now, which I've talked about many, many times before, and how much it has completely changed my life. And learning about the concept of ego, Eckhart talks about this concept and the definition of the ego in that sense. He talks about how the ego is the I, the me, the my. It's the part of you that believes that it possesses things. It's the part of you that attaches itself to things. It's the part of you that not only believes that it's better than other people, but it also could believe that it's worse than other people. It believes that the outside world, things on the outside, make it what it is, make you what you are. So believing that because I have this thing, this car, this house, this amount of money, this social status, this job title, because I have the title of being a mom, or a dad, or a woman, or a husband, or a wife, or a boss, whatever the case may be, because I have this title, I am better than the people that don't have this title or these things that I have. It's also on the other side of it, where because I don't have this, because I don't have money, because I don't have the car, because I don't have the house, because I don't have the title, I am worse than other people, right? Or I am anything. It's the part of you that believes because I have this, do this, possess this, I am this. It's the attachment to the outside world. It's also the part of you that is ever wanting. So this was the big thing for me when I realized, one, the detachment to self. I actually believed that I was this persona. I was the party girl. I smoked cigarettes and I went out and drank on the weekend, and I was very promiscuous and I was wild and crazy, and that was who I thought I was. And when I began to read this book, it really just awoken so many things within me. Another thing was I had depression. I identified with having depression. I thought that I was depression. Until I read this book, when it said that part of you that is always wanting, the ego will want something. Oh, if I get this car, then I'll be better. Then I'll be happy. If I get this house, then I'll be happy. If I get this, then I'll be happy. If I have this girlfriend or this boyfriend, if I have this, then I'll be. Anytime you say that or think that, that's the ego. And so I believed that. And then what happens is the ego will get that thing and they'll be happy for a little bit. And then it'll go right back to, okay, well, this isn't satisfying me anymore. But if I get that, then I'll be this. Or I'll have this. Right? So that's the ego. That's the ego part of you. Now, what I did when I discovered this, and I discovered that I was really identifying with all of my roles in the human experience, even identifying with my body, with the fact that I'm a girl, with my name, with my friends, the way I've lived my life, the way I've been conditioned, all of that is not me. The truth is, I am the infinite soul that never changes. All those other things are temporary, ever changing. That is not me. You cannot attach yourself to something that is always changing. You have to completely detach yourself from that because it's not you. It's not dependable. So when I realized these things within me, at that stage in my life, before I began this spiritual journey, when I was the crazy, wild party girl, I had the mental illness, and I was just wild, chaotic, what I did was, all at once, I drastically dropped every single thing that I could. So I quit drinking. I quit smoking cigarettes. I became celibate. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a house. I was homeless at one point. At this point, when I just began this, I was no longer homeless, but I was living back at home with my dad. I had no bedroom. I mean, I had pretty much like nothing to my name but the clothes on my back. And I was a mom, but I wasn't feeling like a good one. I really just did. I let go of everything. And I did it because I wanted to challenge myself. Because I thought that if I didn't have those things, I wouldn't be alive. And what I realized that even when I was in this depressive episode and it felt like the world was ending, I could feel my own energy. And I realized that no matter what happened to me, that energy inside of me, that life force, always was there. No matter what I was losing or gaining in this physical world, I was still alive. I could feel my own life force. That was what began to make me seek and realize truth within myself. And when I quit the drinking and I quit the smoking and I quit trying to be the entertainer of people and be the life of the party, and I just, and still to this day I'm dropping things and I'm going, oh, there's another thing that I do that I is from my past that I gotta let go. And I started to do that and really realize myself. So, recognize that within yourself. Challenge yourself with that. One of the things that happened with me when I first learned about the ego was, and this will probably happen with you if you look into more about the ego and you really recognize it, you'll start to see the ego in other people. That part that is like vicious, the part of you and them that is anything other than love and goodness and compassion and forgiveness. That's the ego. But what I started to do was, one, I became really depressed. And I started to hate the ego and despise myself for having an ego. But the truth is that's actually the ego doing the despising. So I want to give you a little tip to help you with not hating the ego, despising that part of yourself, and how the ego can really serve you. So David Childerley, if you look him up on YouTube, David Childerley, he is an EFT practitioner, one of my favorites. I tell everybody about him. I love him. He was the first person that I heard describe the ego in such a way that makes you grateful for the ego, and really letting go of that resistance of the ego, because we resist it. We don't want to live out of our ego. We want lasting happiness. We want to live from the soul. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but the soul, we have to understand that the soul, the inner self, the higher self, the part of us that is never changing and is always there and is infinite and eternal, that part of you already knows that you are whole and infinite and eternal, and it is not worried about the ego, that part of you. So to worry about the ego is to live from the ego, right? Any bit of fear or worry or desire, wanting that you have, that's the ego. So I'm going to kind of give you my idea or my interpretation of David Childerley's interpretation of the ego and how it can serve you. What he says is that the ego's main purpose is to back up your belief. So the ego is merely showing you what your beliefs are. It's defending your beliefs. It's all about that primal instinct and the survival that we all have within us as human beings. Okay? It keeps us alive having that, and it helps us in that way. In other ways, it can hinder us when we want to do certain things and overcome certain things, because our mind kind of tells us, oh, I've been down that road too many times and I know it's painful down that road. And so we avoid it, when a lot of times we may need to go down that road, or we may need to let go of that belief, because that belief alone is keeping us from maybe our dreams or our ultimate happiness, and we have to kind of overcome those things. So the reason we can be grateful for the ego is when the ego pops up. So for instance, I literally just had this happen to me yesterday. I'm in this relationship that challenges my ego. I mean, these are the most beautiful relationships you can be in. Gary Zukav calls them spiritual partners. It's those people that kind of challenge your ego, that bring up all your triggers, that piss you off, that bring up all those fears that you resist, right? All those people. And the only purpose for their presence in your life is to bring up all that stuff so you can let it go, heal it, and love more, love deeper, and be closer to God, your source, universal power. So that's why we can be grateful. Yesterday, I had these fears come up in my relationship. Lots and lots of fears, and I recognized, oh my God, I have so much, there's so much ego going on here. And I'm living and reacting from my ego. When I run away from him and I resist him and I go, oh no, I'm not doing this again, you know. And it seems like it's the same thing occurring in my life. And I'm like, oh, I've been down that road. Well, the thing is, a reason I'm going down this same road again is because my ego is trying to show me, you still got some junk down that road that you haven't dealt with. And you want to get to a point where you can walk down that road and you can love. And all of those things don't bother you as much because you've worked through it. So we can be grateful that the ego shows us those things. The ego is merely a tool that supports every single one of your beliefs that are within you. So when you see yourself acting out, you see your ego acting out, you see that being reflected back to you in other people and things bothering you, and you're attracting people in your life that you resist, that hurt you, they're just merely there to show you the ego, and the ego is merely there to show you your belief. Hey, you have this belief, and if you work through this belief, this fear, and if you deal with it, then beyond that belief, beyond that wall, is deeper, greater love and more connection with your source. So ultimately, the ego doesn't even know it, but the ego is being used by the Holy Spirit, the higher self, your soul, the truth of who you are, is using the ego to bring you back to it, to bring you back to God, to realize that you are not the ego, to separate yourself from the ego and realize that we are all one, right? And that's the thing, is that the ego thinks that it's separate from everybody. And it makes absolutely no sense. If you read books like A Course in Miracles, one, you can't even read that you can't understand it with ego. So you have to be like, the ego's got to be on the back, taking the back seat for you to be able to understand that book. But when you get it, it just reiterates how much nonsensical the ego is. And it just breaks down the walls of the ego. And when we learn to kind of separate ourselves from the ego and realize that we aren't the ego, that the ego is just a tool, we can be grateful for the ego. So when we have people in our lives that hurt us, that bring us pain, situations, we think it's so terrible. We're raised to believe, and that in this society, we're raised to believe that we should avoid those things, that everybody needs to be sensitive to other people's beliefs and yada, yada, yada. But the truth is that pain, if any pain is within you, that means that you have pain within you that you have to deal with, that there's this emotional junk you've been holding on to. And your ego's just saying, I'm playing out this emotional junk that is already inside of you. That's all. I'm just doing my job, right? So you can be grateful for the ego. I hope that helped you. Next week, I want to talk about some ways to develop ego awareness. If you haven't already, really powerful ways. And if you're really dedicated to a lifelong happiness, to a life of living your dreams of success by your own definition, right? If you're really dedicated to that, these are some tools I'm going to be giving you guys next week. I've implemented into my life to really take charge of your own life and to take responsibility for your own happiness and your own success and the way you're seeing your own life and the way you're living your own life. So I'm going to give you those tools next week, ego awareness and self-awareness tools. So that's it. I want to know, what is your definition of the ego? Or have you learned from any other spiritual guru a really cool way of looking at the definition of the ego? Let me know. Let me know what you know about the ego. Join the inspiration conversation on DariaAwakened.com right below this video on the post below this video. Join that conversation. Make sure, if you'd like, to share this video with all of your friends. If you want everyone else to sort of assist in the evolution of consciousness and kind of recognizing the ego to really change all of us. You can find me on millions of social media. I just opened a Twitter account, so that's at DariaAwakened. I still have the Instagram account, DariaAwakened, and the Facebook, DariaAwakened. So you can look up DariaAwakened on any social media right now, and you will find me. I post different things on every single one of them, just to kind of mix it up and kind of give everybody something different. You know, so it's worth it to join all of them because you're going to get different daily inspiration on every single one of them. And if you're like me, I love seeing positive, inspirational things when I go onto social media because there's so much crap on there and there can be a lot of negativity on social media. So you can create your social media in a positive way just like you can create your life. So that's it. Happy Freedom Friday. Enjoy your beautiful, beautiful weekend. This weekend in particular is actually Memorial Day weekend. So I have a 3-day weekend, and it's going to be hopefully beautiful weather according to the Weather Channel. So we'll see. I hope the same for you. And I'll see you guys next week. See you later.
Look how far I've come. I was just like you, lost and alone, searching for love. And no matter how hard I tried, it was no use. Did God just hate me? But I was just like you, lost and alone.